pjnet.tv, 9 p.m. Eastern Coast Time in the United States. Our bumper is running. We are recording. We are streaming to multiple social media destinations, and we have a chat room. People are logging in almost every minute. We have our first-time guest standing by. Let's start a countdown to Studio 14. 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, good evening. Welcome to pjnet.tv. I'm your host, Coach Tracy, and tonight is a very special night, as they all are. I say that all the time. But no, I love it when we have first-time guests, and we have a first-time guest tonight. And I normally don't spend a lot of time introducing our guest, but I'm going to read you something directly from her homepage. That's not it. That would be it right there. And I was moved by this, and I know that we have so many writers out there. Words, they're what connect us with each other and with God. They paint vibrant pictures, shout or whisper, convey sorrow or instill joy. Words provide the glue that bind us together. Language is so important, in fact, that Helen Keller called the sound of the voice, quote, the most vital stimulus, end quote. Blind and deaf, from a young age, she concluded, after a lifetime of silence and darkness, that to be deaf is a greater affliction than to be blind. To be deaf is to be isolated indeed. Whether you write or speak, or do both as I do, says she, words comprise an important part of your life. So together, let's explore ways we can better use the gift of words to encourage and uplift one another. What a wonderful thought. Those are the thoughts of our guest for this segment. And here she is right there from her home office where she makes all the words, I guess. That is Tracy Crump. Tracy, it is always great to welcome first-time guests to our program. You must be a lover of books. Looking behind you, what's the big deal?
Well, I hate to say, but it's a little screen. But we do love books. We have shelves and shelves of them. And I love words. Of course, God spoke the world into existence, so we know God loves words too.
Well, yeah, in the beginning was the Word. And the Word, yeah, it's an interesting thought. Now, tell us about your journey. First of all, how did you intersect, I believe it's a friend of a friend type thing. How did you find your way to pjnet.tv?
Well, I had actually seen some of your recordings, I think way last summer, but Josie Styler, just a few days ago, posted on her Facebook page that she was going to be on your program. And so I wanted to come on and support her. She's a sweet Facebook friend. I've never met her in person, but she's a sweet friend. I've done some editing for her, and she's a good writer. And she's also, as she told you on her program, or your program, she's also a gifted photographer. Mm-hmm. So that's how I came to be on your program. I
was quite fascinated. She spoke about a picture she had gotten in the middle of the night. She woke up to the deer mess, and I think it's a once-in-a-lifetime shot, she called it, yeah. And that would be correct. That would never, you could not plan that. You could, most people sleep through those things. What an awful idea. So, in any event, you do several things. You write, you speak, you edit. You tell us your story.
Well, I'll tell you the truth. I never planned on being a writer. That was probably the last thing on my mind. From the time I was 10 years old, I wanted to be a nurse. I went to nursing school. I practically grew up at the hospital because my dad was medical photographer there for 29 years. And so then I went on to work in ICU for 5 years. But I had another dream, and that was to be a stay-at-home mom. When people asked me why I wasn't nursing anymore, I said, well, I have a more important job now. And so my husband and I raised our boys. And God was so gracious to go along with my plans for a while. And then he threw a little wrench into the work. He said I was going to be a homeschool mom, and that was something I never planned to do either. But just like anything that God ordains, it turned out to be the biggest blessing. And so we homeschooled our boys until they graduated. Both of them graduated. And then I went on to start writing. It's not anything I wanted to do, but I felt like God was prodding me to write about a certain situation. And I attended a conference, a writer's conference, and there I met some magazine editors, and they were interested in my topic and my articles. And so I had two articles published in national magazines. I even got paid for it. I thought, oh, this is kind of neat. So, but then I went on to join a small writers group, a local group, headed up by a lady named Mary Lane Wade Koch. And one day, Mary Lane emailed me, and she said, Chicken Soup for the Soul is doing a book on nurses' soul. And she knew I'd worked as a nurse many years ago. And she said, why don't you try submitting something? And I thought, they're not going to publish anything I write. So I just let the deadline pass. And a few days later, she emailed me again, and she said, they've extended the deadline for the Nurse's Soul book. Why didn't you try submitting something? So I thought, oh, it was so long ago, and I can't really think of anything. And finally thought of one story, and I thought of another, and I ended up submitting 5 stories, and they chose 2 to publish. So it was kind of like I came full circle at that time. And so I started submitting more stories, and I eventually published 22 stories in Chicken Soup for the Soul. But I went on to write devotions and published over 100 devotions now. But then later I met an agent at another conference, and he ended up being my agent. His name is Kyle Young. And he said, don't you think it's about time you publish a book? And I said, okay. So he's the one that suggested I publish or write a devotional book. Mm-hmm. And so that's how I came full circle again from being a nurse to publishing a devotional book. It's called Health, Healing, and Wholeness, Devotions of Hope in the Midst of Illness. And so I love how God brings all things back around, and so that he uses your gifts and your talents and your experiences then to reach others.
Okay, and we're going to get more into your book a little bit later in the program, but before I do, now, how old are your boys now?
Oh, they're grown and have kids of their own. One will be 40 next month, and the other one is 35. And they each have 2 children of their own.
Okay, I'm curious. You were homeschooling, that means you were homeschooling your children 20 plus years ago? Mm-hmm. That was before homeschooling was a thing.
Yes, right.
What brought that on?
Well, it was a situation at the school. Our older son was in 6th grade, and one of his teachers was suspended for, I'll just say, inappropriate behavior. And that is another God thing there, because like I said, I never intended to homeschool, but things got rougher and rougher. You know how kids can act up when they have a substitute teacher, and they had one sub after another. Yeah.
I was a substitute teacher for a while.
Oh, did you? Well, we had, I guess, a rough class, but anyway, in February of that year, God just put me in the classroom. The science teacher asked me to take over her class while she ran the science fair. I couldn't even make myself heard above the noise. I couldn't make some of the kids even stay in the room. It was awful. And I'm not a teacher. I know I don't have that gift, and some people do. I'm sure you did. But it just got worse and worse. And my husband had said, well, do you think we need to pull him out? And I said, no, we don't need to do anything that drastic. Well, after I was in the classroom, then I knew that it was time. And we just intended to finish out that year. But the closer it got to school starting again, the more God just laid on my heart that this is what we needed to do. And so we pulled our other son out, and we never looked back.
That was a brave move, a very, very brave move, because today it's not unusual. I mean, it's not the norm, but there's nothing out of the ordinary for people to homeschool their kids. But back then, how did you even find? I mean, there wasn't much to work with back then, was there?
Well, there were some companies that were putting out curriculum. There was Abeka, and it's used a lot of times in private schools. And Bob Jones was around then, and so we did. And of course, we didn't have the internet to look up things. And to tell you the truth, I don't know how I found a lot of this stuff. But we did have. We were very blessed to have a local homeschool group,
Okay.
and so we were able to connect with other homeschoolers and learn what they did. And I think I actually did know another homeschooler before we pulled our kids out.
Hmm.
And so it just, the connections can be so important, and the fellowship with other kids for the children. A lot of people worry about how are you going to socialize your children. Well, that's not the problem. Sometimes the problem is not getting too much socialization. So, but we enjoyed it. We did all kinds of field trips and did classes together on some things. And it was the best learning experience. One of my sons went on to get a master's degree, and the other one got 2 associate degrees. And I'm just as proud of both of them as I can be.
Well, it sounds like it worked out. Now, I'm in Florida, and Florida has, in so many ways, pioneered virtual schools, not necessarily homeschools. But there's so much out there today. And also, Florida has a law, and I wonder what the situation was when you were homeschooling, that you can't be denied access to athletics in the public school system. So how you got 2 boys? I mean, boys are boys. How about sports? How did that work out?
Well, we had a very, very active soccer program in our county, and my husband's a big soccer fan and soccer player, and they even coached and refereed. So we all had already had our boys involved in that, and there was also a large church in Memphis. We lived just south of Memphis, and they had a lot of sports activities going on there. It's funny that you mentioned that, because we actually kind of pushed for homeschoolers to have access to sports in the schools, and it didn't go anywhere. We talked to one of our state representatives, and he was willing to pioneer it for us. But he said, once you open that homeschool law, he said, you're opening it up to more restrictions in other ways. And we were very fortunate that we had a pretty, I won't say relaxed, but a pretty easy homeschool law for homeschoolers, that we didn't have a lot of restrictions and things. So we decided to continue on as we were, but we never lacked. There were all kinds of programs, and we had a huge homeschool group in Memphis too, that we were able to participate in things with, graduations and like little proms and things like that. So they never missed out on anything.
Well, it sounds like there are so many stories of homeschoolers that have struggled, and then there are some that overcame the challenges of homeschooling. But that isn't. I just commend you on your bravery, your courage, and your faith for taking that step so long ago when there wasn't the foundation. It was a sandy bottom back then, and you didn't know how deep the water would be, but you did it anyway. Now, I'm curious, you, like many people, including myself, you say, I'm not a writer, and you did an article, but then you said you went to a writer's conference. So I guess my question, Tracy, is, you're not a writer. What are you doing at a writer's conference?
Well, as I said, I felt like this was something God wanted me to do, and it was funny because I got a letter in the mail, or a card in the mail, advertising this conference, and I have still to this day have no idea why I got that. It's not like they send it to every home in the country. So I don't know why I got it, but I took that as God wanted me to attend this conference and seek publication there. So that's how I ended up, and made friends there that I still contact today. But it just grew from there.
Well, you mentioned that you were here not long ago in support of your friend Josie Seiler. I wanted to let you know that your friend Josie Seiler is in our chat room in support of you. It's a good thing. You cut your teeth, though, in the healthcare profession. hanging around hospitals and things of that sort. So obviously, health, that topic, healing, and wellness are a topic that are not unfamiliar to you. I wondered if we could bring your book on stage entitled Health, Healing, and Wholeness. Not a surprise, the subject matter, given your background.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's, it was kind of a natural for me to write about that topic because I did see God perform some miracles. God is still in the miracle business today, and He's not going to heal everybody. We wish He would, but as we saw in the Bible, Paul prayed 3 times that the thorn be taken from his side, and God said no. But he is still in the miracle business, and I saw that happen more than once. And I wanted to write about those things. I wanted to give people hope. But even if He doesn't heal us physically, He will always heal us spiritually.
Well, and ultimately, we get new bodies without compromising any private information of any patient. Could you tell us about some miracles that moved you to do such a thing as write a book?
Well, the first story in the book is about a baby whose stroller was struck by a car, and she was thrown 30 feet where she landed on her head. And she was brought to our hospital, which is not a children's hospital. She ended up in our adult intensive care unit. The doctors immediately took her. Her pupils were blown and fixed, and as healthcare workers know, that usually means brain death. But she was taken to surgery right away to relieve pressure on her brain. One of the residents who sat in on that surgery told me her half her brain is oatmeal. He said she'll never walk or talk again. But I found out, and a lot of times when patients leave the intensive care, they may get a little bit better and move out to the floor, a regular floor, and we never know after that what happened to them. Mm. But I was privileged to learn later on, after she did get a little bit better and moved to the floor, that she started talking. She said Wawa and Mama, and she walked to her mother before they discharged her. Brings tears to my eyes still, but that's the kind of miracle. God has control. Doctors are wonderful. We can't do without doctors. We love doctors, but they don't know everything. And they are often just as surprised and pleased as we are when they're wrong in their predictions.
Wow. It's hard not to be moved by stories. And that one's very profound, but I'm sure there are others. And now your book is slated to release when?
June the 1st. It'll be a little while, but actually the publisher has made what he calls box sets of 25 or more available now for churches and other organizations who might want to use them for, say, hospital ministry or shut-ins or pastoral care, that sort of thing. And so that is available now, but it doesn't release until June 1st. But it is up for pre-order.
I've got your website, tracycrump.com, on the screen. Unfortunately, the type is pretty much the same color as the background of the work. That, folks, is TracyCrump.com. I was moved by the opening page of that website. It is not often that I read things verbatim here on the program, but I was very moved by your paragraph on the power of words, and we appreciate the words, the powerful words that you have shared with us tonight. Tracy, can't wait to see the rest of that book when it comes out. Thanks for sharing a little bit of it with us tonight, and thank you for sharing your testimony. And we just love having a place where people can share their experience, their walk with Christ here on PJNet. We appreciate you sharing with us.
Thank you.
All right, folks, the fun doesn't end there. Oh, there is the view high atop the Eagle's Nest. That is the broadcast facilities here at pjnet.tv. The fun is only beginning, and what a powerful word from Tracy Crump, but it's not over. Del Didway comes our way at the bottom of the hour. Not only have I got to retool the studio, we have to go to a different studio. to hear from Dale, and he blogs every two. Well, we'll talk more about it when Dale gets here. Folks, before I leave, I would like to challenge you to ask yourself 2 questions. Here's the first one. What is the boldest thing that you have ever done for Jesus Christ? And the second question is, well, when was that? Folks, God's in the miracle business. We just heard it. But we have to be bold. So I hope that none of us will be satisfied with our answer to either of those 2 questions.